Hello and welcome to Bundesliga. I'm Dylan. Now, this year you can watch several Bundesliga games, mainly Friday night games, a number of games anyway, for free. You can watch them on the BBC, you can watch them on Mark Goldbridge's That's Football, or That's Entertainment, or whatever he calls it. You can watch them on the Bundesliga's own channel, and you can watch them on Gary Barlow's The Underlap. So it's all good news. You can watch Bundesliga for free, try it out. It's not going to cost you anything. Fantastic. But you'll be saying to yourself, I'm sure, that's all very well and good, but I mean, I've heard of Borussia Munich and I've heard of Bayern Dortmund, but I don't know anything about any other Bundesliga teams, and that's understandable. Why should you? So in today's video I am going to give you a very rough guide to the 18 teams that are to be found in this year's Bundesliga. Okay, so I'm going to do this in reverse alphabetical order. The reason for this, well, I can, but also because if I start in alphabetical order, just normal alphabetical order, you're not going to watch the rest of the video because all the teams you care about will have come up. So yeah, you're not getting away with it that easily. No. Okay, so we're going to start in reverse alphabetical order, but I also need to make a couple of remarks before we get cracking. The first thing to note is the 50+1 rule. Now, the gist of the 50+1 rule is to make sure that football clubs are not owned by unscrupulous owners, and fans have some control and some say in their own clubs, and it's a fantastic idea. Now, there are a couple of exceptions to this rule. There are a couple of sort of 50+1 teams. So it's important because it's particularly important to see how these teams fit in the context of German football and the Bundesliga, because the Germans are very much big on authenticity, on tradition, and the teams that aren't 50+1 are not seen in a particularly good light. Okay, the second thing I want to talk about first of all is the why did I say first of all? The second thing I want to talk about is the situation with relegation. Now, confusingly, in Germany, you have relegation, but relegation is not what we think of as relegation. Relegation is what we think of as playoff. They call relegation Abstieg. But essentially, you've got 18 teams. Two of them will automatically be relegated as we would understand the word relegated, and one will go into a playoff with the team that finishes third in the second Bundesliga. So two teams going down, one team playoff. Okay, so teams that finished 18th and 17th are going down. The team that finishes 16th has a relegation playoff with a second division team, or the second division team that finishes in third place. And the other thing to note about that is that you think, oh, well, that's quite a fair way of doing it, isn't it? You know, I mean, there is criticism that, well, why should that happen when the team that finished third in the second division has worked all season and then they have to go into a playoff? But anyway, that's just the way it is. However, 99.9%, I don't think it's that high the percentage, of cases, it's the team that's in the Bundesliga that wins. It's very rare that a team in third place in the second Bundesliga will win the playoff. Okay. Now, having said all that, got out of the way, these are little business bits, we can begin with the teams. Okay, so going reverse alphabetical order. The first team I'm going to talk about is Wolfsburg. Now, Wolfsburg are not part of the 50+1 rule. They are owned by Volkswagen, the car company, and their stadium is called the Volkswagen Stadium. So they're not part of 50+1, and therefore they're not really seen as a traditional team. Now, last season, where did they finish? They finished 11th last season, and this season Opta has them finishing 7th. Now, Wolfsburg were kind of middle team with aspirations to get into Europe, and most recently it hasn't really happened for them. I mean, part of the problem for them is their stadium. Now, last season, Ralph Hasenhüttl, remember him from Southampton? He was their manager, and I think he got dismissed in something like April because they went on a bad run. But one of the complaints he had was about Wolfsburg Stadium and the lack of atmosphere and the lack of noise, and this is a common theme for Wolfsburg, because the town of Wolfsburg itself was essentially founded to supply homes for workers at the Volkswagen factory. There are certainly Wolfsburg's, passionate supporters and ultras and so forth, but they're not a well-supported team. They're not a traditional team, and in that respect they struggle. But they're a decent enough side. Whether they can get into the European places is another question, but they look pretty good and they got a pretty decent squad this year. Okay, so that's Wolfsburg. Next up, we have Union Berlin, not Union, as you would naturally say it, but the Germans say Union Berlin. And they are the only team from the old communist East German that was founded before the fall of the Berlin Wall. Very passionate fans, small stadium but very passionate in Berlin, and they've got a kind of us against the world mentality to a certain extent. As I say, that the only team from East Germany, or from the old East German communist state, that plays in the Bundesliga. They've a remarkable story. They worked their way up through the divisions, and they had remarkable success a couple of seasons ago under Horst Fischer, who got them to the Champions League. But it was difficult for a team like that and a squad like that. They brought in some extra players. It wasn't particularly successful in the end, but they play basically backs to the wall football, defend deep, not interested particularly in having possession, and then they rely on crosses and set pieces. But say very passionate fans, and yeah, the only real East German team in the Bundesliga currently. Okay, next up we have Stuttgart. Now, Stuttgart are a big team. They've had a bit of a wobble in recent years. They've been relegated a couple of times, and in fact, I think like 3 seasons ago, they had a playoff for the relegation places, and it was close shave for them, but they got through, and they then hired Sebastian Hoeneß, who is a very well-respected coach, and he has got them playing really attractive football. Now, in the season when all the attention was on Bayer Leverkusen, because Bayer Leverkusen under Xabi Alonso, absolutely fantastic team, But to a certain extent, certainly internationally, Stuttgart went a bit under the radar. And actually, that season they finished second. They finished ahead of Bayern, and there was some games played against Stuttgart and Bayern were fantastic games. There were some really fantastic games because Hoeneß is a really good coach. Plays attractive football, plays passing football, pressing football, a lot of possession, and yeah. But the season after they were second, they lost a couple of their important players. Anton and Guirassy went to Borussia Dortmund, and last season was a bit of a disappointment for them. Now where are we? So they were 9th last season. Opta has them 6th. Now the Opta prediction is based before I think it was done before the transfer window was over, and as you are probably aware, Nick Woltemade, who was their striker, has gone to Newcastle, and they've not really had time to replace him. They've taken the money, thanks very bloody much. 90 million? Oof. Yeah. Oh yeah. But they have not had time to replace him. Start to the season hasn't been ideal, so it'll be interesting. I mean, they will finish in the top half almost certainly, and they would hope to get European places, possibly even Champions League places, but it will very much depend on how things pan out for them. Okay, so the next team I want to talk about, having looked at my notes, is St. Pauli. Now, they're a team that's based in Hamburg. They're kind of a sort of reputation as kind of a hipster team, kind of left-leaning, very into social causes, social justice, and so forth. And yeah, they're not a huge team, but very passionate fans. And they got promoted last season into the Bundesliga. Had a really strong defence and managed to stay up. But yeah, they stayed up, and there were problems that they had with scoring goals. Essentially, they weren't letting goals in. They were very. I can't remember if they had the first or second best defence in the league, but yeah, they struggled to score goals. Now this season, or at least the way they've started, well, they've already scored, I believe, 5 goals, so they're looking good for that. And while some people may think, oh, well, they could get relegated, or they could end up in the playoffs, they're looking pretty decent this season. Last season, so they finished 14th, very good finish for first season back in the Bundesliga, and Opta has them 16th, which would put them in the playoffs, but I think they will do pretty well. And you might have seen they had a derby against Hamburg on last Friday night, and yeah, they're a good team. They're a good team. 1-2 now. Okay. So next up, we have Mainz. Now you will know, or you probably have heard of Mainz before. They're the team where Jurgen Klopp started as a coach, and Klopp was then followed by Thomas Tuchel. Good team. They're not. Then I think it was Klopp himself who got them promoted to the Bundesliga, and they've kind of established themselves as a Bundesliga team. They're coached by Bo Henriksen. He's got them playing kind of a very intense game, pressing and so forth. That's what he wants, and he's very he likes to G up the crowd and get involved. And last season they finished 6th, which means they'll be in the Conference League. I think they've got through the qualifiers for the Conference League. And let me have a look where Opta's got. Opta's got them 8th. Conference League may affect them because they haven't got that big a squad. But yeah, they're a good team. Good. You'd look at sort of middle to possibly European places, but they should be in the top half anyway. Okay, so next up we have Leverkusen. Yeah, Leverkusen. So not part of the 50+1 rule. Because they're owned by a Leverkusen drug dealing company. No, not drug dealing. No, it's libelous. No, a pharmaceutical company. And yeah, I mean that's the main employer for the town. Not an especially popular team in Germany because of that mainly. But they have a lot of fans around the Leverkusen area, and historically they've been in the Champions League a few times, so they're well supported. So as compared to say Wolfsburg, obviously they won the Bundesliga a couple of seasons ago under Xabi Alonso, and a fantastic team. Xabi Alonso did a fantastic job. Last season second, and this season I think Opta's got them third, but they have, as you're probably aware, lost a lot of players. They've lost Granit Xhaka, who was kind of the heartbeat of the team. They've lost Florian Wirtz. They've lost Jeremy Frimpong. Who else? I mean, Hincapié, Jonathan Tah. A lot of the core of that team is gone now. But so they need a rebuild, and if you're going to do a rebuild, who else do you call but Erik ten Hag, right? Erik ten Hag. Oh, yeah. So, as you may be aware, Erik ten Hag lasted a couple of games in charge, or I think it was 3 in total, 2 Bundesliga games and 1 Pokal game. And yeah, they fired him. It didn't go particularly well. And it was a case of Leverkusen saying to him, it's not us, it's you, Eric. So whoever they're going to get in, there's all sorts of rumours. I would love Postecoglou. I would love Postecoglou to go to Leverkusen. I think that'd be fantastic. But we shall see. So, as I say, they were, second last year. Opta's got them in third, but you're gonna have to find a manager, and they're almost in a Chelsea situation. I mean, not in the way that Chelsea deliberately sort of bought a load of new players, but because they had to buy Leverkusen had to buy players because otherwise doesn't have a squad. But it's going to take a rebuild, and it's going to be a difficult job. So it's hard to predict. I mean, they should finish in the top half, but it's going to be difficult for Leverkusen this season, I believe. Okay. Oh, sorry. I was just going to have a quick drink before I. Oh, that's good. Where are we? Let's can't who's next. Oh, of course not. Yeah. So the notorious RB Leipzig are next. Reputation, as you will probably be aware, as the most hated team in Germany because it's kind of entirely artificially constructed by the Red Bull Corporation. Although you will also be interested to know that their name is not Red Bull Leipzig because German rules in football dictate that you cannot have advertising in a club name, which is good. So their actual official title is Rasenballsport Leipzig. Okay, Rasenballsport is just like lawn ball sports. Anyway, So, yeah, not popular. They are officially part of the 50+1 rule, and the reason they get around it is because they make it impossible to become a member unless you're unless you're part of the most of their members are just employees of Red Bull. And in addition to this, as if this sin wasn't enough, they're also part of a multi-club ownership. You've got RB Salzburg, you've got New York Red Bulls, and you've got Red Bull Leeds most recently. Mark my words, it's coming. It's coming. Okay. As to the football, well, yeah, it's interesting. There was a kind of philosophy that's sort of gone out the way a little bit, a Red Bull philosophy, high pressing team. There's a very interesting video, I think, with Jamie Carragher and Jesse Marsh you can find on YouTube, where Jesse Marsh talks about Red Bull football and what it means. But it's basically essentially high pressing, zonal play, winning the ball back, that kind of stuff. You'll be familiar with all that. Which again they kind of do now, but not so much. And they've brought through a number of coaches have been part of the Red Bull universe. Oliver Glasner was, Marco Rosen. Who else do we have? Anyway, several. Julian Nagelsmann. Or Julian Nagelsmann is current is the current manager of the German national team, and he was part of the Red Bull. He managed Leipzig. Anyway, okay. So what's interesting about them now is that they've kind of become, again going back to making Chelsea comparisons, but this year like people have talked about them as requiring certain things in a footballing sense, for example, to strengthen their defence. Possibly midfield could do some work as well. But what they've gone out and done, and to be fair, they've lost their entire front line, as per usual. Sesko's gone to Manchester United. Xavi Simons has gone to Spurs. And they've lost their entire front line, and in that respect, yes, you're going to need to buy players. But what they tend to do is buy a lot of young wingers. And why do they buy a lot of young wingers? Because Premier League. Premier League likes exciting young wingers. Chelsea love exciting young wingers. So you could kind of argue that they've really become a bit of a club that likes to flip players for money. And they certainly had ambitions, Leipzig, to be Bundesliga champions, and it just didn't happen. It's not happening, and it doesn't seem to be. Obviously, you've got Jurgen Klopp as whatever he is, global head of football. But yeah, it'll be interesting. It sort of looks a bit like they've lost interest in the football. Anyway, but Leipzig. I mean, to be fair, there are passionate supporters, and again, I was saying, even though obviously Leipzig wasn't part of the old East Germany, they are a club in East Germany, and if you look at the map, so I think plenty of people would say yes, there is a place for a club from Leipzig, but not that, please, not that. Okay. So last season wasn't a particularly good season under Marco Rosen. They finished. Where did they? For 7th, they finished. As and 5th, they've got Oli Werner, who came from Bremen this season, highly respected coach. But obviously they got thumped by Bayern Munich on the first day 6-0. So we'll see. I'd expect them to be there or thereabouts in the Champions League places somewhere in Europe. I mean, this year, and also they haven't got Europe this year, so that might help them out. Okay, moving on. Cologne, FC Cologne. Yeah, so they are one of the promoted teams. They've kind of flipped and flopped in the Bundesliga over the years. Getting relegated and then coming back up. But they unfortunately got themselves in a situation the year before last, I think it was, where they had a transfer embargo because they tried to sign a young Slovenian player, or they did sign a young Slovenian player, and he still had a contract at another club. So in other words, they were accused of breaking contract, and 2 transfer window ban was imposed, and that kippered them, and they went down. Last season, they won the second Bundesliga, and this season they've spent quite a bit of money. So most people, I mean, generally the clubs that come up are the teams that are favourite to get relegated, and actually can look pretty good. They've got money because they haven't had any. They couldn't spend it before, so they've got some decent players in, and yeah, I think they should be relatively safe. And they started the season has been fantastic for them. They are yeah, 4-1, was it 4-1 victory? And a 1-0 win as well, so they got six points already. Okay. Moving on, Hoffenheim. Now, Hoffenheim used to be one of those clubs that exempted themselves from 50+1, but in more recent, I think it's 2023, they've gone back to that model. Should I look up his name? Dietmar Hopp was a software millionaire, invested a load of money in them, got them from the lower divisions with the help of Ralf Rangnick, who imposed his style of football, high pressing, zonal football, simply. And Rangnick worked as sporting director at Red Bull as well, so very influential figure. But yeah, not a popular team again, because they're seen as a particularly artificial team like Red Bull. So they are now 50+1. They had a disastrous season last season, and where they finished last season 12th, Opta's got them 11th. And again, they're sort of a team who, a bit like Wolfsburg, kind of have ambitions to be better than they are. They're always kind of mid-table sort of placings, but want to do better than that. And they look decent this year. I have to say, they look decent this year. So, time will tell. Time will tell as to how well they do. Okay, so next up, we have Hamburg. And Hamburg are newly promoted team. They were in the Bundesliga from its inception until about 7 years ago, where they got relegated, and quite a shock. They had all sorts of financial problems, but they were like, well, we'll take a relegation year and we'll work our way. And it's taken them 7 years to get back up, because the second Bundesliga is extremely, extremely competitive. So they are one of those teams that is kind of romanticised thing that they belong in, and not just from Hamburger fans, but from the footballing public at large sees them as, well, they belong in the Bundesliga. And there's and I saw the game on Friday night, but against St. Pauli. Fantastic crowd, fantastic stadium, passion. Yeah, they do, in theory, belong in the Bundesliga, but it's been 7 years. That kind of feeling of, yeah, we're home, might come back to bite them. Um, and they've already had a bit of a shock on Friday. So but in the transfer window they reinforced by getting Vieira from Arsenal. No, not that Vieira. No, Fabio Vieira from Arsenal. And do you remember him? Didn't really happen for him at Arsenal, did he? He spent last season on loan at Porto, where he came from, I think. Very creative player, and this is seen as a real coup. They've got him on loan. There's an option to buy, but which will be about 20 million, and Hamburg won't. They won't have that kind of cash. But yeah. One of the problems that seemed evident in the game against St. Pauli was a lack of creativity, and Vieira should give them that. So, but where are we now? Okay, so last season they were second in the Bundesliga 2, and they Opta has them as 17th, so straight back down. It will be tough for them, undoubtedly. It will be tough for them, and I mean the Vieira signing is a good signing for them, and they've made one or two other reinforcements. Let me have a look. Lokonga from Arsenal as well. He's injured quite a lot, so we'll see if that works out. Who knows? Possibly. I think a lot of people don't want to tip that. They're a club that people are reluctant to tip as getting relegated. The most want to say, well, they should make the playoffs at least, but that's the reality. They may well go straight back down. Who knows? Okay, now next team is Heidenheim, and I've realised that that's not alphabetical because I've read Hamburg. I got excited and read Hamburg before Heidenheim, but anyway, you don't care, do you? Heidenheim, very interesting club. Worked their way up with their current manager Frank Schmidt. I think he's been in his job since about 2007. Frank Schmidt, fantastic job. Tiny club, built it up. Just the romance of football, made it to the Bundesliga. And not only did they make it to the Bundesliga, but they also, there was a couple of seasons back, they made it to the Conference League as well, came 6th. Fantastic. But that was last season they were playing the Conference League, and it was a big strain. A club like that, they just don't have the resources. They ended up in the playoff places last season, but managed to just about skin of the teeth, stayed up, which is good news. They won't have the burden of Europe. But they're one of those teams I've noticed a lot of people are tipping them to go down, and there's kind of a bit of a thing where perhaps you and I would see, well, that's a lovely story. Yeah, they're in the Bundesliga. But a lot of Germans don't see it that way. They kind of think, well, they are a 50+1 club, but they're a tiny club. And it's kind of a case of, well, it's probably time that they let Hamburg take their place. So and it is going to be tough for them again this season. But Frank Schmidt's done a fantastic job, and the Hamburg connection comes over the fact that Hamburg, the season that Heidenheim came up, season before last, thought they were promoted on the last. Literally, it's done, and then there was 10 minutes added on in the Heidenheim game, and Heidenheim won that, and the hearts of the Hamburg fans were broken. So, but yeah, so there is a kind of thing of like, oh, we want the traditional, the big clubs in the Bundesliga, which you can understand. But I kind of like the Heidenheim story. Anyway, moving on. Gladbach, Borussia Mönchengladbach. Big club. In the 70s, they were the main rivals, not Dortmund, but the main rivals to Munich, Bayern Munich, and they were, I can't remember how many championships they won, but they were more successful, certainly in the 70s, than even Bayern. And yeah, they're kind of a club now where they're sort of a bit adrift. If you talk to Gladbach fans, it's kind of, where are we going? What's the direction? What's going on? They had Leeds manager, current Leeds manager, ex-Norwich manager, Daniel Farke, 3 seasons ago or something, playing possession football with them. Didn't go particularly well. He left. Most people kind of said, yeah, we don't want to see Daniel Farke back in our league. Thanks very much. Just, so he didn't come out with a lot of credit. And yeah, again, big club, but their aspirations to be bigger. And they've been in the Champions League 2 or 3 times. Not that long ago, actually, they were in the Champions League. So hope springs eternal, but they tend to be fair to middling, and there's also a feeling they're kind of declining as well. So they might well finish in the bottom half. Where are we? So they finished 10th last season, and Opta has them 14th this season. But it's a club that's kind of frustrating for their own supporters, because we want to be, and they're just not. And it's difficult. It's also that the thing with them as well is like, well, what, we're not seeing an improvement. We're not seeing a definite style of play. It's all very for Gladbach. Okay, next up, Freiburg. Now for years, Christian Streich was their manager. And he left a couple of seasons ago and was replaced by Julian Schuster. There were worries that could mean, cause some instability, but last season they were fifth, and they could have got Champions League last season as well. But yeah, Streich was a huge figure, got them up, they went back down again, stuck with him. Continuity, and they play solid defence, intense, and generally they're a top half challenging for Europe club, but they've not started very well. Couple of losses, big losses as well, so we shall see. And the other things, so yeah, they were 5th, but interestingly, I think most people had tipped them to be there or thereabouts again, but actually Opta had them in 13th, or has them in 13th, so who knows, bottom half. They would expect to finish top half of the table at least for Freiburg, but yeah, who knows. Okay, we're getting there now. Next team, Eintracht Frankfurt. You might well have heard of Eintracht Frankfurt. Former manager, obviously, Oliver Glasner, won them the Europa League, and also for the players that your Premier League club has probably got from them. So they've lost Mamouche, they've lost Ekitike. I don't know why I say et every time I try and say that. Ekitike. Here we go again. Ekitike lost to Liverpool, but they're set up for those kind of losses because they know they can make money, they can grow. They're kind of a 2 steps forward, 1 step back club to get where they want to go. really, really good development system, really good coaching. Like, for example, Mamouche, when he first arrived, was not a goal scorer, and they turned him into one. So, yeah. And this season they've started decent start to the season. Some people are like, oh, well, they could challenge Bayern. Extremely unlikely that we'll challenge Bayern because they just don't have the resources. They've lost a couple of world-class players, but you know, and in the sort of head-to-heads between Bayern and Eintracht, Bayern struggled last season, and they play the sort of nightmare football for, you know, like the kind of Manchester City possession dominant teams, counter-attacking teams. You know, it's like Manchester City and Spurs when they've kind of just counter-attacked on them. Got a good record, certainly last year anyway, Eintracht Frankfurt. And I think they might have done them 5-1 under Tuchel or something when Bayern was managed by Tuchel. So yeah, that will be interesting. But I think overall across the season they probably just don't have the resources to just quite get there. And yeah, last year, the third Champions League football this season, Opta have got them fourth. But again, the Champions League will be a bit of a challenge for them. They weren't in Champions League last season, I don't think so. No. Okay, next up, here's a club you'll have heard of. Borussia Dortmund. Yeah, Dortmund. Dortmund are kind of... It's difficult because there's a perception of Dortmund, for example, as a club that develops young players, sells them on. You know, we've seen it Erling Haaland, Jadon Sancho, Jude Bellingham, but it's kind of not their model anymore. And they've lost a lot of ground in that respect to Eintracht Frankfurt, and they lost a lot of ground to Leipzig as well. It's not really like they sold Jamie Gittins to Chelsea this season, for example, but it's just not. They haven't had that level of development, and yeah, again, you know, nearly won the Bundesliga under Edin Terzic 3 seasons ago. Threw it away. Again, under the same coach, final of the Champions League, didn't happen for them. So, you know, one would expect them, like last season, they went on a really disastrous run, and they got in Niko Kovac to, where are we now? Okay, yeah, to steady the ship, and they managed to get fourth, and it was kind of miraculous that they got fourth. Opta had them second, but you never know what you're going to get with Dortmund. That's the thing. They'll turn up for the big game. They have that kind of thing of, can he do it on a Wednesday night in Stoke? You know, some games they just won't turn up to, and you just think, well, you played a fantastic game in the Champions League, and then the particularly opponents that will sit back and defend deep, that they struggle against. So yeah, it's really hard to say. They should get Champions League again, and they'll probably do okay in the Champions League itself, but challenge to Bayern, no, and categorically say no. Okay, next team, Werder Bremen. Werder Bremen had a very good season last season under Oli Werner, who's now, as I said before, at Leipzig. Finished 8th. Opta has them 9th. There are worries this season. They've lost players. They've had injuries. New coach. They're kind of a team that want to hit sort of up, kind of middle, almost the middle. And they've won the Bundesliga before, but they don't want to be dragged into. They're kind of more a team that don't want to get dragged into relegation. So Bremen have they've kind of reinforced, but they've reinforced by getting because they had a problem with they didn't really have a striker or identifiable striker. They've got Victor Boniface from another one of the Leverkusen players has gone. He's had injury trouble. He had a medical at AC Milan apparently that he failed. If they get him playing, it could be very good for Werder. Like I wouldn't expect them to get relegated or even be in the playoffs, but some people think they could really struggle. So they've got a 3-3 against Leverkusen, so it shows they've got a bit of spirit about them. As far as goal scoring goes, if Boniface can get fit, because Boniface was fantastic that year when Leverkusen won the Bundesliga, he was absolutely fantastic. But injuries, can they get him going? That's going to be a question. Okay, and now the moment you've been waiting for, it's Bayern Munich. You've heard of them, right? Yeah, Bayern Munich. Okay. There's not much to be said about Bayern Munich that you don't already know. They should win the Bundesliga by a country mile. Some people have said like by at least 20 points. But their main ambition, like the Bundesliga, is almost, it's not taken for granted because you've got to work for it, right? We will win the Bundesliga, but their ambition is to win the Champions League. That's what Bayern's about, and they don't really look set up for it. They just don't look good enough. The squad, I mean, they lost Musiala. You might have seen the horrific sort of looking injury, which wasn't as horrific as it looks apparently, but they will miss him. They brought in Nicholas Jackson. He might work in the Bundesliga. Who knows? But that's been a problem for them, having a backup for Kane if Kane gets injured. If they get some injuries, they've got Luis Diaz who can do, but it's difficult. It's difficult for them. There are question marks over them. Certainly not in terms of will they win the Bundesliga, but certainly in Europe, and also in terms of squad depth. And Harry Kane had said, I mean, they say they brought in some reinforcements, but Harry Kane has said this is the thinnest squad I've ever been involved in. And that was before the transfer window closed, but it's not great. And if they get some injuries, then I don't know. I don't think they'll struggle to win the Bundesliga. But and they've got Alphonso Davies is out. They get them back, Alphonso Davies, Musiala, soonish, then I mean it'll be fine, I would think anyway, in the Bundesliga, but Europe is where they want to be. Okay. The final club is FC Augsburg, who are now managed by Sandro Wagner, who was an assistant coach under Julian Nagelsmann for the national team. And so let me check where they were, because I can't remember. Last year they finished 12th, Opta has them 10th. Very horrible team to play against. Defensive, stay back. They're a team that, for example, Dortmund always struggle against. Nobody really wants to go to Augsburg. I mean, you've seen that. I think it was partly Bayern's own fault, but they got them back to 3-2 last weekend. But yeah, in theory they'll play more expansive football under Sandro Wagner, but in essence they are just a kind of nasty sit back, long balls, crosses kind of team. Not particularly exciting, but one of the teams that people they traditionalists and I say they are 50+1. They're kind of not seen really as a Bundesliga team, but they've stuck around. They finished usually just above the relegation zone, sometimes a bit higher, and they're like a bad smell. They won't go away, Augsburg. Okay, been a particularly long video. I think that's pretty much it. Thank you for watching, and I will see you next time. Bye bye.